Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call where we're going to discuss the database layer of our product, Amos slash Learn Anything. We haven't decided on the name yet, but nevertheless, we are already working on the database. Somebody kick it off and let's get to work.
Yeah, sure. So Kumar is here as well. Yeah, so from Learn Anything side, I was actually trying to sketch it today. I just didn't have enough time. Basically, as far as the Postgres thing is concerned, for Learn Anything, we'll have study plans. So that's yeah, I think it's better to actually sketch it out. I can do that now. Let me.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to share your screen and we take one set of notes?
Yeah, sure. We can try that. Let's see. Oh, there's actually a whiteboard for. Okay. So can you guys see the whiteboard thingy?
Yep.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so to preface this, I'm not too familiar with Postgres aside from sort of working with them, but I never actually made a schema as such. Yeah, so there's definitely going to be, yeah, I'm not sure how Neo4j works. They have a different sort of model, but let's say we have a user, and that's sort of like a column with a bunch of the user ID, the reputation, if we decide to build that straight away. But basically, yeah. So there's a user, and different users can collaborate on study plans. So a study plan is I'm not sure for actually for the study plan whether we're going to be using like Markdown, kind of something that is like portable, or we use kind of our own system, because yeah, I think Markdown is a good choice. But basically, a study plan. Let's see, study plan is just kind of a list of. Can you actually also see my my browser as well now?
No.
Okay. Let me see.
I think you can share your entire screen. I'll just
Yeah, I think I'll do that.
You have to click stop share.
What about now? Can you see both this thingy and the browser?
Nope. I think that it's also possible.
Okay,
Oh, now
what
I
about
can.
now?
Yep.
Okay, but then the whiteboard went away, which is kind of annoying. But sure, maybe I can do like this. Okay, so let's I'm gonna use this app for a while. But basically, let's say we have a user, we have a study plan, or some notion of a study plan, and you can also let's say we have resource or resources. So this user has a name, some reputation system we can think of. But the basis of Learn Anything, at least, was that we have users who collaborate on study plans, and study plans have a bunch of resources, which can be a link, perhaps a media file, or if we go with the Markdown way, where, for example, at GitHub, you can't actually directly import media files into their sort of repositories, but you can sort of link to a media file, and that sort of embeds the image. So yeah, basically, we can think of it maybe as a Markdown, or rather, the study plan is some kind of Markdown file that people can collaborate on, and we we make the collaboration aspect of it frictionless. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so this is so this is an example, like a great example of a study guide, which is like very rich. Not all study guides can be sort of this rich, or not necessarily have to be this rich. So this one is, for example, a guide for equity compensation. So you can basically replace this with computer science or any topic, and then the way we can present it, it could be in different ways, but basically this one has a rich content in the sense that you can add any text that you want, and then add any links, but also a guide can be something like this. So let's say a guide is programming, then you can do like programming, for example. So this is an example of a study guide that is valid. So for example, wiki, but that's going to be a markdown file, or like you can do it as steps. So wiki, and then let's say there's a programming. I quite like this course I'm going with, like OCaml. So OCaml course, and then you can maybe say that goes over, perhaps as a footnote or something, that goes over fundamentals of programming using OCaml. Some kind of justification for why this resource is there, for example. So this is already a very simple study guide that can be published on Learn Anything, and then people can already collaborate to it. So as far as, yeah, so I don't know, do you have any thoughts on this? Do you think this model can work with the study guides? We had a brief discussion yesterday with the way Amos, and so we will also talk about how we can combine sort of the Amos's approach, where people don't necessarily collaborate in the study guides directly, but they submit resources, and then our system basically creates this kind of guides sort of under the hood. But sort of the end goal, I think, of the system that we want to build is to provide this kind of guides, and in a sort of an experience that is as nice as kind of this Holloway guide here, with, like, for example, you can bookmark guides. Another thing that I want to mention is for user, the way I see it is that user can have also topics that he's learning, topics learned, or rather, so there's also going to be a notion of a topic or topics. So this is basically our knowledge graph of all the topics that we cover, sort of like how in Quora you have topics and people contribute, people ask questions that are related to a topic. I think we should have the same. And then people can add sort of study plans can be added to topics, or be attached to topics in some way. I don't know, there should be like a create connection or something. I forgot how it is.
Yeah, I think there was a connect option.
Yeah, there you go. So it's come out now. So basically, study plans are how would you say, attached or associated with topics, and then user can specify whether he knows a certain topic or specify proficiency with a topic, or he also can specify which topics he wants to learn on next. So that's something that also the user needs to do. Yeah.
So a topic will have resources.
So a topic will have study plans and resources, because study plans in them, study plans have resources in them, right? So the main interface of people, whether it's a user, because you can also use the platform not being logged in, but you basically search. You have a search bar and you type in a topic. You get different suggested topics. You type in you find the topic that you want to learn, and then you have either different study plans that people have made. And so this is basically those study plans are going to be the kind of the guided study plans, like this one, or the Holloway one, or you can sort of search over, or you can basically get as a result the resources themselves. So you don't want to go through the sort of hassle of choosing the study plan and going over the study. You just want the resources kind of in a Google way, in a Google style. And so that's one. This option, I think, is one that is most similar to what Amos was planning to do. So that's what I mean by like combining both approaches. So we combine. We have the user has the ability to go through any of the study plans and go for this guided approach, or just get the best resources available for a certain topic, kind of in a Google style way. Yeah, and the cool thing there is that we can actually we can use the crawlers over like existing databases or existing indexes that people have provided. But the cool thing with the study plan idea, and if people actually will use it and sort of contribute to it, because another thing that I want to mention is that there's this programmer roadmap that I think Dominic, pretty sure everyone has seen. But this is basically a developer roadmap and has 82,000 GitHub stars. I don't know, have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Yeah, so basically, so this roadmap is just for web developer, right? So we wanna provide. So GitHub is like definitely like this. To be honest, it's pretty shit. And this has 81,000 stars. Like you can imagine, it would be amazing if we all can also maybe somewhere down the line provide ability to create this kind of rich graphs. But you can, for example, they're interactive. So for example, this one is just a static image, but you can traverse the graph and say HTML, and it opens like a topic and learn anything for HTML, or CSS, and it opens the topics for CSS. And you can provide the building blocks for creating this kind of stuff. So that's what I mean by study guides can be like very rich or very simple. Like this has been done in like 2 minutes, and this is already a valid study guide. And then we basically build the infrastructure for people collaborating on improving on this, making forks of it, and then making everything consumable. Because one of the issues, as I mentioned in the previous call, is that we'll have an issue of a lot of study guides that are going to be very similar, and we will need to, not put that mess onto the user where he has to like decide which study guide is right for him. So that's where sort of the Amos approach of just giving the resources works really nicely. You just type in the topic and you get all the resources associated with the topic that are like high quality. And so this is kind of, I guess, the rough gist for.
I don't know, I just feel like the just the list of resources for a given topic is not enough. So that's like not what we're doing, right? So that's what Google does. What we're trying to do is give a list of topics that would be not just ordered, which is a very critical thing. So it's essentially the list of topics is the study plan. It's a learning path, but also most importantly, it's parameterized by a bunch of variables, right? By your academic background, etc. So it's essentially, I would think of it more as a study plan. Yeah, one that is like automatically generated for the user, personalized for his background.
Perfect. So that's I agree with you definitely. So that's what we're doing. I guess it's the other aspect is just the approach of this one is collaborating on the study plans directly in a sort of in GitHub style way, where people collaborate on files and submit sort of PRs or some aspect, some notion of a PR.
So kind of like your curated lists currently for learning.
Yeah. So something like basically curated lists, like this. But yeah, I don't know if you can make it simpler, but I think this approach works quite nicely on sort of collaborating on files. So the issue with, I guess, GitHub, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is how we can actually maybe work with GitHub in terms of like people can maybe create study guides on GitHub and learn anything on our platform, perhaps can consume them in a nice way. So then we don't have to build the infrastructure for doing all that kind of collaboration. At least for
that sounds like a good idea to me personally for this approach.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think that this can work because initially for sort of the MVP version of the thing, we were thinking of just as far as collaboration goes, to just have people kind of suggesting changes. So you have a Holloway guide like this one. And you can even, for example, I think you can even suggest here, for example, like, or you have to log in. But basically, you can type in, you can sort of inline say that, hey, person who made this list, I really like this. Can you add this link? And the person the main contributor, will then add this link. But the problem there is it's not decentralized. It's sort of centralized to the person who made the list, and you basically just pushing suggestions to the person. Yeah. So. There's different ways we can sort of approach it, and we can sort of combine. But I do think that the using GitHub or using as much of GitHub strength as possible in order to make this, I think is a good idea. Because another thing is that a lot of sort of this awesome lists that are sort of by Centrosaurus, they can be considered a study guide in some way, like for example for Linux. But it's not a directed guide, it's just a bunch of resources. Well, in this case, it's just like a bunch of operating systems or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how far you can stretch the notion of a study guide. This is not a study guide for sure, because it's not guided and it's just a bunch of resources. But it is a resource. So one of the things I've been thinking about is, like, assuming we build this platform, I would love for there to be like the true one study guide that kind of emerges from kind of like what this awesomeness have. But basically, like, if enough people collaborate on a study guide, you will have a definite guide for learning anything. So you will have a definite guide.
For me, that's not the case, because I think that the resources should be personalized to the particular person.
Yeah, I agree.
Personalized based on if you want to spend 5 minutes or 5 years. It has to be personalized based on so many variables that it makes sense to me to craft them algorithmically rather than have 10 million study plans.
I agree, and so this is where kind of all this stuff we can use. So all of that stuff, I think, and perhaps more, we can use in creating custom study guides, right? So preference in learning, perhaps you can either specify on the user level, or if we collaborate with a tool like Memex, where it grabs all your history with a browser extension, we can somehow infer sort of this preference, where perhaps we know that the user likes videos over articles or articles over visualizations, and we can use that plus the topics that he's learned and topics he wants to learn to craft kind of a unique study guides. But yeah, so in order to get there, we need users, and we need yeah.
I guess like the way I think about it is, we want to provide as much value for the least amount of input from the users. And if you think about N resources, then if we have information about N resources, then essentially an algorithmic like structuring of the study plan would mean that it would be able to give an N factorial amount of study plans. In fact, even much more, because you can also take study plans that don't include all the resources, right? So with just N information about resources, we can craft like a factorial level amount of study plans algorithmically, while manually it's just linear. So that's why for me it makes sense to like the algorithmic approach. But you know, I'm thinking of a way to combine them. Like when you search for something in Amos, it could either give you the algorithmic route, or it could also like link to specific guides as an alternative. So I think that both are possible.
I agree. So I agree. So one of the issues with like having so many guides that are algorithmically, like curation is a very, very, very powerful way to create sort of guides. Like even because you can imagine like a guide for JavaScript or something. You can create a really amazing general guide, something like what is there on GitHub, and then optionally it's just because it's very hard to create a guide that is like very high quality if you don't, like we have to be working with data, right? And this way of like creating a tool where people can create study plans in a way that Holloway does is like an amazing way to do it, because if we do it well, if the product works like smoothly and everything is, and people want to both well, initially just firstly like actually use the platform and create and use the study plans, then they will sort of naturally want to contribute to those study plans and make them better, because they're actually using their primary users of those study plans. And so we can build like a very, very amazing platform just with the study plan idea alone, just without any sort of algorithms or anything like that. And if once we add those algorithms, and once we can use the data that is submitted by users in a meaningful way to create those kind of study guides, then our platform becomes sort of the de facto standard for education.
Here, let me say it in a slightly different way. So if you think about the study plans, like my question would be, why would they not be structured? Like if you have resources that are, that are in some specific position in a study plan, that tells you like information about those resources. And it makes more sense for me rather than the study plans be markdown files that like to take the lowest unit of divisibility to be the resource is a more granular approach than the study plan. So for me, I think it makes sense to begin with the granularity level at the resource level rather than at the study plan level. But I'm also interested in, for example, with things.
I think I agree. I actually agree. So it's just that, okay, so let's say the study guide, the study plan collaboration or improvement of study plans is not exposed to the user. So from my understanding, Dominic, you just want users to submit resources to the platform and specify additional sort of metadata
Right.
to it. And then we craft those study plans.
Definitely.
So you think that's better?
I do think that makes more sense because we can get, like with one information about one resource, we can fill it into a lot of places.
But okay, so let's say, so resource, I'm just curious. So then what kind of metadata were you thinking about? So a resource is a link.
Yeah, so in the long run, it would be essentially the set of metadata that a friend, or in our case, an algorithm, would be interested in when recommending to you learning resources. So that's like sort of the definition of this. For the MVP, we're thinking of just a very small number of metadata, and in particular, that is the what we call access, the access screen in the wireframes, which includes the format it's in, how much it costs, or whether there are ads, or whether it's completely free or subscription based, as well as the link exactly. And the second screen was the topics that it's on, and the third one is the learning dependencies. We're omitting length for now, but definitely I think the very next one, the fourth one, will be length, which will also allow us to search based on time constraints. The reason that we omitted length is it's a little bit tricky because different people consume resources depending on their skill level in the subject.
Okay. And so, okay.
Yeah, here, let me, here, maybe like, yeah, I think you did quite well. I would put link under sort of, yeah, so I would have metadata, and then that would branch into three things: access, topic, and learning dependencies. And then under access, I would have format and cost and link. Yeah, and then you can get rid of those and the link. And so the reason we're doing it like this is it also like makes the access more granular. So for example, if there's an audiobook on Audible, you can either access that through a subscription-based model, or you can access that by paying the fixed amount. Or for example, another access would be, text, actually the actual Kindle, for example, ebook. And so that would be format text. And then there could be also a version that is like in Kindle Unlimited. So then that would be cost zero, assuming that you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. So there could be multiple ways to access the same resource depending on the format and the cost.
Okay. So yeah, that's definitely interesting, and that certainly can work. I think. Are all of those are optional, or they're required for submitting a resource?
Everything is optional. You can do partial reviews as well.
Okay, and how do you or how do we make sure that the metadata is correct? That the person.
So we use the concept of like kind of a shelling game, except we forked it so that we can allow like never-ending shelling games. So essentially, like, to boil it down into one sentence, if you vote for something like a topic, then every like other person that votes in the same direction as you gain reputation, except it grows logarithmically. So the next person, you will get 1 reputation point, then you need another 9 people after that, another 90 people after that, 900, and so on. And in particular, the people's votes, they're not scaled by people. They're scaled also by their reputation. And on the contrary, if somebody votes no for that topic, then you will be losing reputation in the same way.
Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable, I think. What do you guys think, John?
Yeah,
And
that actually sounds pretty good. And another thought that just came into my mind was if when they do submit and then people do give it a good reputation, then we can use like Genius Link and like encode the link that they submitted if they did submit a link, and then we
What's
can
a-
pay them some
what's
of
What's a
that.
Genius
and then
Link?
also-
what's a Genius Link? Yeah.
Oh, it's some YouTubers use it. It's like yeah, that's it. So like if you direct people to different websites, you get paid some money.
Okay.
So like
Wait, what? I don't understand. So like, I mean, like an affiliate program, correct? Like we would sign up for a Coursera and Udemy affiliate programs, and every time we traffic users to their website, we will get $3, correct? Which is definitely a good idea, and it's in the backlog.
yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying here is that when people themselves contribute to study plans and submit links, we should use this. And then if their reputation is like, if that link has a good reputation, then we can actually pay them some of the money that we're getting.
Oh, I get it. This is actually quite amazing. Yeah, that's a good idea. So basically, it's an incentive, like actually a financial incentive for people to submit good links.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for me, like, I don't know, I think of our platform as information based rather than transaction based, and I think of information as something that should be free, which is why we're doing this nonprofit model. And so for me, like, I think that we can incentivize people through soft means rather than through monetary value, through means such as community, reputation, wanting to help others, wanting to change the world, rather than introducing a crypto or
I would agree.
traditional.
I would also agree with this, and also one point against John's idea is that once you add sort of monetary system like this, where there's financial incentives, people are going to be looking very hard into how to abuse the system
Fair point.
in ways.
Definitely, that's another point. Yeah.
And that's just something that I don't think we should be dealing with, where we don't want to. Yeah, this shouldn't be the focus.
Another
I
point
think.
is like it turns out it's very hard to have the entire system be fully game theoretically sound. Like we spent maybe too much time on this. Let's say 2 weeks ago, like for a whole week, I was thinking about the game theory of it. It's all on YouTube. And essentially, like at the moment, we're like not that sure that it's fully safe. So what I'm trying to say is, if we tend towards something like Ethereum, a very, very open and monetary platform, then it will get abused because it's not game theoretically safe. If we tend towards something more like Wikipedia, community-based platform, then I think that not only will it contribute to our end goal, will also won't be hacked.
Yeah, I think the big point there is that if Wikipedia can also easily be abused, but the people who want to abuse Wikipedia are not necessarily. There's no direct financial. There's no direct financial incentive. People who are going to be interested in gaming the system are there's 7 billion people who are interested in gaming the system to make some money. But if you're interested in gaming the system just to I think it's just not a good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, nevertheless, thanks for the proposition, John. I think it's good to brainstorm. I have a lot of ideas that make sometimes no sense on second thought.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, but then speaking sort of database wise, right? So we have so I don't mind sort of iterating. I think one of my beliefs is that software is sort of an evolutionary system where you don't have to like master design every little detail and then release it. But I think it's good to have something that we can see working or not working, right? So we can definitely go with this resource and access format link and see how that goes. And as far as database, so this All of that stuff can easily be stored in Postgres, and I think would work wonderfully well. So one other thing that I think we're going to be building is the notion of knowledge graph, right? With topics and different. So actually, let me see. Yeah, so I found this, and I haven't really looked into hard, but it's basically a distributed knowledge graph store. Seems interesting.
Could you?
Yeah, it's it's made by eBay, and yeah, the name is just distributed knowledge graph store. And I was just wanted to look at the code and the documentation, to see, to like what is actually a knowledge graph.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I'll look into that as well. It looks like they have an introduction, maybe a blog post. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. So I'll link that into the chat. Let me see. Or
And
I'll
then
link it.
another one that I recently found. I posted it, or maybe somebody directed my attention to it. I don't know, maybe it was you. I think it was you actually. That some university is opening up their sort of database of resources, and then they want to like generalize it and like open source it. Remember the GitHub thing?
Right, yes.
Yeah, so then there's that as well. Do you know what that's about?
And there was also, I think, something similar to this as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can look into this stuff.
So actually, from I'm reading this, and basically, so Beam has a nice foundation and very useful to some people, but also additional. If that's not you, here are a few alternative open source knowledge and property graph storage that you may want to consider. And so Neo4j, for example, it's a property graph store that has a Cypher query language, single master, scales out for reads only. So I think.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think maybe this gave me an idea. So is it a database, essentially a graph database, or is it an actual like hierarchization, right? Because that's the hard part, is to actually create the hierarchies. I mean, to create a graph database, you can do that with Neo4j.
I think we should just read it and maybe have a call again. I'm not sure what exactly. It's a distributed knowledge graph store, sometimes called an RGF store or triple store. Knowledge graphs are suitable for modeling data that is highly interconnected by many types of relationships, like including information about the world. I think it's
I'm going to spend a few hours going into all these different systems.
But okay, but the point you brought up is that, let's say for knowledge graph we use Neo4j. So what exactly do we need to make that knowledge graph work? Like, I think aside from knowledge graph, what were you planning to use Neo4j for in your system?
So we have, great question. So we essentially have three big graphs in our specification. The knowledge graph, definitely. Resources also form a graph. So if you guys saw the wireframes, for example, you saw that there's sort of first level nodes of resources, such as Coursera, University of Oxford, essentially the platform that it comes from. And then under that is, the different, for example, courses for university, etc. So resources also form a tree, which then allows us, that's really what allows us this very granular approach to categorizing resources, where you don't have to take a book as a book, but you can take a book by its 13 chapters, and maybe somebody would be interested only in, let's say, 3 chapters of the book. And then also the original idea was that reputation would also be a tree, and in particular, it would copy the knowledge tree. So we wouldn't have one centralized reputation, but people would have reputation in whatever knowledge node that they want. So that would essentially, the idea of that is that it would make it better for the community. So it would resemble more a moderator system in other communities, excuse me, because you would have reputation in maybe number theory or mathematics, but maybe not in other topics. So 3 trees: the knowledge tree, which is like pre-filled by us, essentially, by the developers, by the foundation, and then in the future, it's all obviously open source, and we allow pull requests to it, and and then we have the resource tree, which is filled using reviews, and we also allow changes to it through what we call proposals. It's also one of the tabs in the sketches.
But this resource tree, isn't that the same resources that people submit to the system?
Yeah, so kind of. So I would say like this. So the the bottom most nodes are the resources that have these metadata. You can have metadata for higher level resources as well, but once they get children, you can no longer submit metadata to them. The idea is to make it like always as granular as possible. So if a course on mathematics from Oxford has already been split up to its 3 or 4 sections, then there's no point submitting metadata about the course itself when a more granular level is available. So the idea is, yes, always the bottommost nodes can have metadata submitted to them.
I see.
And
okay.
And then there's the reputation tree, which just is essentially everybody's own copy of the knowledge tree, where each node has a scalar quantity determining your reputation. This is one thing that initially my question was: is this technically feasible that everybody has their own knowledge tree, even if not all the values will necessarily be non-zero? But my great advisor Ani has assured me that this is possible. Yeah, unless this changes, then that's.
What do you mean by own copy of knowledge tree? In how I was viewing the system is that we have a knowledge graph of all the topics.
No, by own copy of knowledge tree, I just mean like the nodes, and then for each node there's a quantity of reputation. That's what I meant. Like if you have the knowledge tree, very simple one that just says either math or physics, then everybody would have a reputation tree with math and physics, and for math and physics they would have a quantity from 0 to infinity.
Okay. What is quantity? What do you mean by quantity?
Just a number, a non-negative number.
No, but is it something that like hits the proficiency in the topic, or what is it?
Oh, so yeah, that's a great question. So at the moment we're planning it is like the reputation is literally just the reputation in the Amos platform. If we were to ever in the future like add sort of credentialing, then this Amos reputation could be like one of the many ways to get credentials, because if you have a lot of reputation, a certain topic from Amos, then it's very likely that you understand that topic very well, right? But at the moment we're separating the two. And we're thinking just about this one, which is reputation in the platform, depending on how well you categorize the web's resources. Does that make sense?
So it's basically, but it's a reputation that is tied to a topic or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so you basically, if I have a certain reputation in mathematics, I can say that I have some proficiency in mathematics.
So like it's impossible for me to answer this question. So the way you get reputation is by categorizing resources, right? So I don't know if there's a correspondence between how well you're a contributor to the Amos platform and how well you understand the topic. There's definitely.
Okay, but what about the case? What about a case that is like a well-known topic that is like it's very well categorized on our platform? Let's say linear algebra, and so it's very hard to contribute meaningfully to linear algebra when everything is like already categorized and nice. But I want to specify my proficiency in linear algebra somehow.
So yeah, that's the Solvio platform, and that we don't have the specification for yet at the moment. I mean, I have some ideas in my head, but that's not what we're building at the moment. So essentially, you could think of it like, you could think of the question like the question: does a high Stack Overflow score mean you're a good programmer, or does a high, I don't know, Wikipedia thing mean you're good in that particular topic? And there's probably going to be a correlation, but they're not necessarily like the same variable, right? So maybe somebody who has a high Amos reputation is very good at finding new resources that a lot of people like, because if you get into the resource as the first voter, if you get in early into the resource, you're going to reap the benefits of everybody else who comes after you. So there's also this benefit, right? So yeah, I would say there's definitely correlation, and it can be possibly, we could think about whether we want to use it for the Solvio platform as well, but it's not an intention to represent your knowledge. It's an intention to represent your contribution to the platform. Does that
yeah, I
answer the
think so.
question?
Yeah. Well, actually, the specification for Amos is on the Notion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read that today, sort of in detail, and yeah, I should have done that earlier, but okay, yeah. But as far as the database storage is concerned, so I think the knowledge graph, like Neo4j, may be a good option. We can read also on this Beam, and I don't know. Have you made any progress on modeling that kind of what your list trees in Neo4j?
So I have shared this link for hackmd file. Just open that up in Zoom.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, okay.
So this is a rough sketch over different types of models and what all things it can contain.
Oh,
so there's a user with some name and some other user data will be there. Other miscellaneous data. Right, a user will have a reputation which can be calculated in terms of the study plan rating, topic rating. We can come back to this one. In study plan, there will be topic ID, which every topic can have some resource ID. A particular user can create his own study plan, and everybody else can follow it. And if they like it, they can rate it. Every topic will have some link to discussion forum. It will have some link to resource ID, and anybody can also rate a particular topic based on whatever they go through their lessons. For resources, it will be created by some users who will assign that. It will be associated with some topic ID or just its parent topic ID, something like that, because it will be a resource tree or something. So we'll figure this out. And it will have some resource data, which will be some link or markdown file or wiki, a format just to specify it, and learning dependencies. If this particular resource has some learning dependencies to some other topic and some other resources in that topic, some cost for this particular resource, and also it can be rated by different users, whoever has created. And if it gets positive rating, the user who has created this particular resource, his reputation will go up, and we can calculate that in that matter. Then there can be lessons which a user will take, which will actually define his progress and his own map. So it will be associated with one user, which topic he took, and some feedbacks on that topic. It can also be linked to a forum. So forum, we can maybe build it later, or for now we can go with associated with discourse or something. We can take that after. We can take that call a little bit later. Access will give a particular user access to a particular resource ID, and there can be access level, read access, write access, or some other access. So
yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle of like what me and Nikita were talking about. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, actually, I didn't quite get quite a lot of it. Like, so for example, study plan has topic ID and has resource ID. So it has, so the way I see it, do you guys see the study guide as this kind of stuff? This is a study guide, right?
I mean, for me, that's not a study guide. For me, that's a resource. Like, I actually read this Holloway Guide to Equity Compensation, and rather than be like a learning path, it's not an awesome list. It's essentially a textbook.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, so I agree. It is a resource, but a study guide is, so if you think about it, a study guide is also a resource. So one of the cool things I've been thinking about is that you can embed study guides inside other study guides. So Let's say you want to learn machine learning, you can say that there's a study guide for statistics, there's a study guide for linear algebra, and there's a bunch of other resources that you want to. And so it brings a really cool abstraction where if you want to create a study guide from scratch, there's like a million of other study guides on our platform that you can like use as building blocks, aside from resources, but use other study guides as a building block. And so in this way, you can also build your own sort of learning dependencies well, very easily. Just specify what you want to learn, and then
I think that's a great. I think that's a great comment what you just said, because it essentially unifies both of our sort of approaches, right? As in, like, if you search for something on, for example, Amos, then one of the resources could be a community GitHub style crafted study plan that you know you want to have down the line, and then you could that could be one of the things that is listed among the other resources. In fact, it could even have its own like sort of category, as in here's a list of resources, but also here's a category called, you know, study plans, or just one study plan that you can check out, and it's just essentially like fully tailored to your use case. So like, if there are no study plans based on your search or your current parameters, then, you know, the algorithm crafts it. But if there are also like actually human crafted study plans, then it would also output those. I think that makes a lot of sense to unify the two searches, the two approaches.
And if we're embedding different previous study guides into this study guide, it's easier for us to say, oh, he's already, or he or she has already learned that, so just don't preview or don't show it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
If we're going to start with the submitting of the metadata before we go into the human crafted study plans, which I like more and more.
I mean, all we need is to create study guides en masse. So we need like thousands high quality or millions high quality study guides on different topics. Because then, like, a good sort of model to think about these things is we want to create the building blocks for easily building and collaborating on study guides. That's how I see it. And once we have, it's actually quite amazing.
For me, the end goal is like different. If you really like summarize it in one sentence, the end goal for me would be that anyone can, learn anything parameterized by whatever they want, right? And if an algorithmic or a community based study plan is part of that equation, you know, for me, I just want to give the best results to the users.
Yeah, it's a combination. So it's a combination. So, but yeah. So my issue with what you said here is that I don't quite see how this maps out to this. But of course, you didn't actually map it to this. So
okay, so I have added in the resources a type which can specify if it's an article, tutorial, video, study guide, etc. So the way I was seeing study plan is a collaboration of different types of resources into and topics, instead of having just one file of the entire study guide. So we can have a different type of resource which can specify that as study guide, and that will and a study guide will obviously have more weightage than a normal article per se.
A study guide will have what, sorry?
If a user submits a study guide, that will have a bit more weightage as compared to an article or maybe a video if somebody submits.
Why? What do you mean by weighting?
So by weights, I mean so which can be more beneficial to go through.
That's not true, because for example, you can link to a very, very simple study guide, but you can also link to an amazing book, and the book can have much more quality, or like you will get more out of the book than a study guide, if you see what I mean. It's kind of hard to judge, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is details.
I agree, this is details, but I think I just want everyone to sort of like so that we all agree with how we sort of proceed with this, right? So in the end, we want to get something like this, right?
So for me, okay, so I'm gonna say it like this. I like more and more this idea of the GitHub style collaboration on study plans. But I feel like from a purely like sort of efficiency perspective, we should go with the resources as the lowest unit of divisibility at first, because then with just, let's say, information about what is it, like 200 resources, which we actually already have right now, we can craft over 200 factorial number of combinations, which is, well, it's just much more. So for me, an algorithmic approach is one that scales and one that costs zero. And then a crafted approach is one that's better, obviously, but that requires a lot of work. So we introduced that, or we introduced that straight away. I don't mind, but like if we have to choose in front end work on, then I would say we go with the resources because it's more efficient per unit of contributors' effort.
So let me see. So okay. So access, format, cost, link. Okay. So if I go on the platform, I want to submit a link to the programming wiki. So to the programming Wikipedia, right? I submit the link, and I need to specify what exactly, or optionally, what could I specify to it? The cost. I say cost is 0.
Yeah. We also have like whether it has ads or not. That's also included in the cost. So you would say free, no ads.
That's a very stupid metric, because firstly, like everyone, I would just cut it out completely. Like that's.
Wait, what? You would cut out like ads? Like I think that's very relevant. Like
I don't think it's relevant.
I mean, there's resources, right? Like there's Wikipedia and university websites that don't have ads, and that's why one of the reasons why people go to Wikipedia is they're not bothered by 80% of the file size being advertisement.
Well, I run an ad blocker. I run an ad blocker, and a lot of people run ad blockers. And just from a user perspective, I don't care if programming Wikipedia has ads or not. I just care if it has a block. I would care if it's paywalled, right? I would care about that. But like ads,
for me, ads is a way to pay for the resource.
Sure, but it's something that you don't need to specify on a resource. You don't have to put that. Like you want to remove as much friction as possible from submitting your research. Like ads is just like it's kind of useless, to be honest.
I disagree, because the more information we can get, the better results we'll be able to provide. Maybe in the future we can. I mean, all of these fields will in the future can be parameterized in the search. So if you want ads, or if you don't want any ads, all of that will be available. Then there can be options where you pay but you get no ads, and or you don't pay but you get ads. Additionally, we should try to promote people that do not have ads on their stuff. So and it's not the case that most people run an ad blocker. That's like by far.
I think it's just silly, but also like the future is like the stuff that Brave browser is doing with their cryptocurrency, where like ads is something that like it just. A lot of websites need ads to survive, and there's no need to. I wouldn't definitely ever consider if the resource has ads on them to lower the quality of the resource. I think that's a stupid metric. Like ads is not something like horrible or bad, or same as with cost. But the ads are, you can still learn for the resource easily with ads. But if you live somewhere somewhere where basically you don't have money and there's a cost like $100 for a course, then that's something that is just blocking you from using the resource. And it doesn't say that the resource is bad.
I don't know, like for me, I think where the world is moving is people want to pay money to get rid of ads. I mean, I personally do this. I pay for YouTube Premium just so that I don't have ads on YouTube, on mobile, for example, where you can't run an ad blocker, or on Google Chromecast where you can't run an ad blocker. So if it's the case that people are willing to pay money to get rid of ads, well, then maybe ads are, for them even worse than paying a cost. And I feel like if we want to make this platform to be as granular as possible, then and ads is a way to pay for resource,
Okay, sure. I disagree, but let's leave ads for now. What else is added? Or optionally, what else can I add? So like, I just want to see for the flow of submitting resources. So I want to submit the program in Wikipedia. I submitted to a topic, right? In Amos, do you submit it to a topic or just submit it generally?
You
Or I
submit
guess.
generally for now.
Oh, so you don't even specify a topic.
I mean, that's coming later. So if you look at the metadata graph, then there's access, there's topics, and there's learning dependencies. So the first thing you specify is the access, which includes the cost, which includes ads. It also includes the format. So again, you can go very granular, whether it's video or audio or text. In which case, it's possible to specify. Yeah, I mean, not.
Okay. So a lot of this actually, I think we can infer from the resource itself. Like I think you can analyze.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, that's definitely in the backlog, is actually automating a lot of these things. We're literally building an MVP that we want to have within let's say 1 to 2 months, and for that, yeah, we just have a simple.
Okay, sure. So this, what else?
I mean, go to the graph. It's all there. So format, cost, and link.
Format, cost, and link. What is link? So link is actually the
so that
URL itself. So this is the URL.
I think so. So when it comes to text, that can be more granular as well. So in this case, it will be, for example, text HTML.
So does it have a name? So does it have a name as well then?
So name, yeah. Name. The idea was to pull name from hitting the website with a HTTP question. So that part is filled automatically. Yes.
Okay, but it's still nice to actually give an option, because sometimes what you get from the URL is not nice. Usually, actually, it's not nice. But okay, so name, format, cost. So what I'm trying to think is, so we have a bunch of resource people that have submitted, and then.
But then we also have you missed the latter two nodes. So then there's topics, which is essentially an array or list, you could call it, of topics that the resource is on. And most important of all, the learning dependencies, right? But like, it would not be recommended, it would not be considered good practice to categorize the whole Wikipedia article, just because it includes so many subtopics, right? So you want to go very, very granular, but you can do this as well, since it doesn't at the moment include any children. So the topics would be something like programming, based on the knowledge tree, and then the learning dependencies. Well, these are split up into 5 strengths. And well, I haven't read the article, but it might be recommended that that you actually have experience with programming. Maybe the article is not an introductory level article, which is for a lot of Wikipedia articles, unfortunately.
Is that a dependency?
No. So the language is not a dependency. No.
Why not?
At the moment, we just do English for the MVP. I mean, this is literally, as you said, we're not building a data model that's going to be 10 years down the line. We're building a data model that the first 10 users are going to use 1 month from now.
Okay, sure. Okay, so assuming we have that, and let's say we have 100x of similar resources like that. So then I, as a user, want to visit websites or platform. I type in type programming, and what do I see?
So at the moment, as a result from the reference, we essentially split up the project into 2 phases. We think it's useless searching on an empty database. So we're iterating in whether we can even get whether we can even build a community of people that would be willing to sort the human knowledge. So at the moment, search is disabled. Once we're able to, if we're able to.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, once it's enabled, like what's
okay, right? Yeah. So then, so even before that, we would enable you to go to your own knowledge tree, a copy of the knowledge tree for you, and self-attest to knowledge that you have. So you'll be able to self-attest to what you already know, and yeah, then you go to search and you type in what you want to learn, and based on what you know, it will show you the learning path. Also, we should also have length by then, and it would. There's 2 options, right? Either it finds something that you don't know, like all the resources on that topic require you to know something else. For example, all the resources on cryptography very likely require number theory. So then it will teach you number theory first. While on the other hand, if it found resources that, for example, already use what you already know, then it would they would give those resources. So it's this like using both like from a negative perspective and from positive perspective to give you the best results.
Well, I'm still a bit confused. So I type in programming, I see a bunch of resources or guides.
Yes. You see, I mean, the original idea was you see a learning path, which is a list of learning resources.
You see study guides. So see one study guide or multiple study guides?
You see one list of resources. So I don't know if one list. So you see multiple resources, one list. And then another idea is to actually allow you to switch between the different lists. And then the idea we got during
this. I see this. So I see something like this.
Is to potentially integrate the human crafted study plans as well as another option if they're available.
But so I see this basically.
What do you mean? You don't see Markdown? No, you see. I mean, it's a React app.
No, but like I see basically. Well, this is not Markdown. This is just a bunch of resources.
Right. Yeah. That could be the case indeed.
Okay. Yeah. So I still prefer the approach of collaborating on study guides because it's just much more rich in terms of what you can do, what you're able to do. Firstly, you don't get just one study guide.
Well, no, I mean you can parameterize it as much as you want, so you get probably millions of study guides if you have that much time.
But let's see.
So we can categorize here in terms of a couple of study plans which is suggested by other users when they went through their programming path.
I just feel like, oh, okay, sorry, Anya, I should let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first thing I think that they should see is study plans which has been taken by other users and probably has been completed over time. And after that, they can see like individual resources which might be new or nobody has taken so far.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to output the most popular stuff. Nikita, are you still with us? Because your screen froze.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, actually, I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I still think this approach is much nicer, where where the focus is really on the collaboration of the study guide. But there's still the ability to add resources. So all of that is fine. All of that is fine. So we can have you can collaborate on. So we can have the human created study guides, and then we have the algorithmic choice where people can create the add resources directly, as well as we aggregate all the resources from the human collaborative study guides. And then we have this kind of flow where you visit the platform, you type in programming, and then you see you see the list of resources that is sort of tailored to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, we have the same end goal, but we have slightly different ideas for like what's the first UI that we build, right? And I think we should do both. Like it seems.
I agree.
That, if we both really want to build what we're each proposing, then let's do both. And most importantly, there's a lot of room for collaboration between the two things. Like as I was saying,
I agree.
I feel like the Amos search should also show you human-based curated lists.
I agree. And I'll try to get some time and maybe develop like a mock-up, or if anyone wants to help me with that, that'd be amazing. So that we also have, aside from this sort of kind of textual thingy, maybe have a way to visually see how we can go through the flow of combining those two approaches. And I don't mind actually sort of forgetting for a little bit the human collaboration aspect of study plans and just focusing on adding the research, because that's something we've thought of initially.
Right.
Only that I would iron it out. For example, ads I think is kind of stupid. And format, sure, we can add that. As far as your opinion of like inferring link, that what would be nice is that you type in a link and it will infer a link, but you can optionally say your own name for it. For example, you can imagine like in a grayed out text, like it will infer. Let's see
Yeah, but why? Like, why would you want to do that? Like, why not keep the name of the resource to be the name of the HTML website that it points to? Like, I'm talking about for the MVP, just makes the whole data model easier, because then you have to figure out like, what if somebody enters something wrong, etc.
I just know examples where what you will infer is just going to be like bad text, like it's just going to be nonsense or not.
Like for me, that's a feature that we could build for 2 months from now.
But okay, sure, yeah, I agree. So okay, sure. Then yeah, definitely we can do that. And topics it's an array of topics, so it's like an array of associated.
Yeah, topics are an array. Dependencies, they're separated by strength, which ranges from 1 to 5, and each one of them is an array. But then also,
so one of the things to focus on is we need to keep this as simple as possible. So we remove as much, like it's very hard to convince people to submit resources if there's like lots of.
I mean, there's a big difference between how I'm explaining it, which is maybe 100% terrible, and what the user sees in the end in the UI. And I think that wireframes are done, so we can always comment on that.
Okay, yeah, sure, I agree.
Also,
yeah.
Dominic, are we also going to have in the UI ability to add text, like not just links but also text? Because I feel like
so for me, I really like the idea was to have for Amos to be a database of hyperlinks. So for me, I'm not interested or concerned with like it to be a way to create materials. I think that's something that Nikita has proposed and is really passionate about. So something that we could build on later, either like into the product, or I would say as an external product, or use GitHub for it. For me, our database.
Dominic, actually, one of the things that with this human created study guide approach, so here's that this approach doesn't cover. Let's say you want to let's say like this. I'm learning GraphQL or something. I'm learning GraphQL, for example. Like you can imagine a guide that will say, well, go and do this. Go and watch this video on like minute 8, right? On minute 8, for example.
Yeah, you can do that in the link, right?
With this study guide, you can do that.
Yeah, you can do that here as well. For PDFs, you can add hash page equals. For videos, you can add the time as well. So yeah, just to summarize, like maybe I explained it incorrectly. We're not saying that we'll never have text. As Ani mentioned, the idea was to integrate some sort of forum or use Discourse for that later down the line. But in what we're building right now, in the next few weeks, we're not having a forum functionality. But yeah, as I also said at the very beginning, you can encode a lot of locations into the URL, such as for PDFs, for YouTube videos, etc. And even for HTML pages, right? Usually you can do hash something to get to a specific location.
Also, what's it called? Yeah, so I think that it's very important to have editing available on GitHub, but also on the website, because I mean, in the future we won't just be having learning resources for just computer science, where people normally do have GitHub accounts and know their way around Markdown and Git and all that.
Right. Yeah.
That's a great point.
Maybe there is a tool for it. Like I agree, that's a great point. What I always like to do is always search if there is an existing tool, and only if there isn't, start build it myself. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was something like GitHub for whatever writers or journalists to collaborate, and whether it's based upon Git under the hood or not. Like online collaboration for text or for Markdown.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And that's going to be the hardest part, at least. So there are two hardest parts. There's one hardest part is in terms of the human collaboration of study guides. The hardest part is going to be building the tooling to support that. And then the other hardest part is making use of all of that data that people submit in terms of topics and dependencies, and making great use of basically transferring all of this thousands of resources that people submit into this kind of guides like this.
Right.
So those are the two hardest parts I see. Everything else is rather trivial.
Yep.
I agree. Yeah.
And even
for me, I mean, for me, the non-trivial, the most non-trivial thing is, getting an actual community to actually, do the filling in the database, right? That's what the value of this product is in the data.
Yeah, I agree. But at least in terms of
you're right.
For both of those cases, I think
the hardest part to build is the data model. Yeah, we have that because we spent about 2 weeks thinking about that, and then the next hardest part is search, which is luckily coming in about 2 months.
Yeah, but I think as far as community goes, if we build the tooling right and everything goes well, the community is there. Like there's an enormous community. So yeah.
That's really good.
Okay, so what do you think should our next steps be in terms of progressing this forward?
I still feel like we have quite a bit to discuss. What do you guys think? So maybe we'll take a 5-minute break and reconvene, or you think we can finish up in? I think that there's still some more to discuss.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what. Yeah.
So let's meet. I want to take a short break. So let's meet in 7 minutes at 3:20, and I'll pause the recording as well. Does that sound good to everyone? Can I get it?
Sure.
Confirmed? Perfect.
Sure, why not?
See you in 7 minutes.